Analyst Brian Sobel. Brian, let's start with Prop 22. It calls for Uber and Lyft, among others, to be classified as independent contractors. They have spent a ton of money on this proposition.
Frank, if you watch TV, you have seen the commercial advertisements for Prop 22. The issue, of course, is whether Uber and Lyft drivers and delivery drivers of other types will be exempt and be independent contractors versus falling under a broader set of employment tenants that the other side would like to see. So 22 is going to be very interesting tonight as we see the results. But hearing a lot of people within the Uber, Lyft communities and others, and a lot of money in there, suggesting that people ought to remain as independent contractors. Let's see what happens.
Let's talk about Prop 15 now. That would change commercial property taxes. It would tax properties based on current market value rather than the purchase price, and it would increase property taxes on commercial properties for funding to go to local governments and schools.
That's another controversial proposition. There are 12 propositions, by the way, on the state ballot, as we know. But 15 is very interesting because it is one that would take any commercial property over a current market value of $3 million and tax it to benefit schools, as you suggested, Frank. Well, obviously, that's run into a lot of opposition by commercial property owners who want to see the valuations stay as they have been and the taxation stay as it has been. The cause is good in many people's minds. It goes to local government, it goes to schools, but there's a lot of pushback on Prop 15.
And finally, let's talk about Proposition 16. That would repeal a constitutional provision that made it unlawful for California state and local governments to discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to people based on race, ethnicity, national origin, or sex.
Well, this one is also, as many of these are, controversial, have people on both sides of the issue. In this case, in Prop 16, the local entities, the state could make provisions for race, sex, color, ethnicity, national origin, and this is in the areas of public education, public employment, and public contracting. So big change there. Currently, that under the Constitution is not allowed, but under this proposition, the state constitution would be amended to that constitutional provision would be amended to allow local governments and others to make a decision based on those things.
Brian, what's your thought on propositions? Because oftentimes what happens is we have so many of them on the ballot, and once the vote is in, they then end up in court, and the litigation goes on for years.
I've said for a long time, Frank, that I think propositions, state propositions, are the result, frankly, of the California legislature not being able to address these core issues. They're very controversial, and nothing stops a group with a special interest from going out, gathering the signatures, and putting these propositions on the ballot. But I think it requires a state law, a constitutional amendment, whatever is required to make these propositions before they qualify, go through the legislature so that the legislature can weigh in on the basics of these propositions to see whether they should be moved forward to the people, or at least, at the very least, the legislature should be required to vote on these things, yea or nay, before giving it to the people. It's problematic to have all of these brought forward, cycle after cycle after cycle.
Brian, let's talk about the national election. Right now, Fox has Joe Biden with 91 electoral votes, Donald Trump with 73. One of the key states is Florida, and so far, according to Fox, with 88% of the vote reporting, Donald Trump leads Joe Biden by about 2 percentage points. How crucial is Florida? If President Trump loses Florida, can he still win the election?
He can, but it's a very narrow window or needle he'd have to thread because we don't know what's going to happen in Ohio and Pennsylvania. But I would say at this hour of the night, he needs to have Florida. And 2 percentage points in Florida is very typical of those races that have occurred cycle after cycle in Florida. And we may not know tonight who wins Florida. It may take a couple of days, maybe longer, Frank, but Florida is critical, in my view, to the success of Donald Trump.
And Brian, just one other quick question here. Obviously, control of the Senate is at stake. Right now, Republicans control the Senate. At the end of the day, do you think that Democrats will retain, or regain, rather, control of the Senate?
They could very likely pick up a couple of seats. That changes the math entirely. It could be, like much of the country, Frank, a split Senate, like we seem to have a split electorate. And but it does look like apparently Mitch McConnell's going on to victory. Lindsey Graham's holding off his challenger, but very early. That's the whole thing here is at this hour, we don't know what we don't know, and it's a lot.
Well, we still have a long way to go, and we'll be talking to you again on our 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock broadcast tonight. Brian, thank you. And